Hello and welcome to the second instalment from hospitality discussions in the New Forest at the new Park Manor Hotel as part of the UK Roundtable Roadshow. We're heading to Cornwall and Northampton next to find out what hoteliers in those regions have to say about the challenges that they're experiencing. But first, in this episode, we look more deeply into revenue and opportunities and experience and expansion. Thanks to all our sponsors, including our platinum sponsor, Focus on Hospitality.
Hotelier's Voice. Exploring opportunity in hospitality with Ryan Haynes. Hear from the people making a difference. From revenue to operations, marketing to digitalization. Learn the thinking behind their decisions.
So, looking at revenue and opportunities, Sharon from Net Affinity, one of our sponsors, also as part of this set of trio roadshows. So growing bookings with connected tech, the role of guest user experience and the importance of tracking, quite a bit in there. And I know we're going to be visiting one of your partner hotels, the Headlands in Cornwall, who I had a pleasure of seeing a conversation between you and the owner, Varian Palmer, last week at Hotspace. But how are you seeing hotels gain greater control over their bookings at the moment?
It's really identifying who you are as a property, and you can't be all things to all men, like you just can't. So actually identifying the people that are booking, and there's lots of ways to do that, but it's really looking at the personas that are coming through your door, and actually then from a marketing perspective, identifying say 3 or 4 or 5, whatever they be, key personas, and actually looking at the whole journey that customer needs to take. And that, so I'm a very different customer if I'm a couple, I'm a very different customer if I'm a family, or if I'm coming a family with a pet, I'm again equally a different customer. So it's about identifying that. But then when I'm a customer coming into your website, show me as a customer. So from a piece of marketing through to the website, through to the booking journey, they should all be cohesive, consistent, user-friendly. It should ask me the questions, personalize the whole experience. And that can be done through systems like ourselves, where you're saying, okay, I have a piece of marketing that I'm putting out on social, and we look after marketing for our clients. So I'm putting a family package out. I want to land into the booking engine. I don't necessarily, or maybe a landing page. I don't want to have to read the whole website. So show me a landing page of just family information. I want to see a family package, what your family friendly, activities are in the area, what your dining times, family reviews. So give me one page of information showing me that, and then link me straight to booking. But in the booking process, then I can be asked the ages of the children. I can be asked, do you want to upgrade movie pack, the cinema, all of these. But I'm only ever seeing that if I'm a family customer. If I'm a honeymoon or, romantic couple coming in, I'm seeing a very different customer journey, and I should be. And again, even from that whole tracking piece, I'm then able to say what, are couples buying? What are they upgrading to? What are they taking upsell? And then again, you then look at the data, and data is absolutely king in all of this. So it's about having those personas, but then look what they're actually buying and saying, okay, if all of my couples are buying the upgraded suite, make sure the suite is offered to them first as the room type. Make sure that champagne is offered as the upgrade for dinner, or the tasting menu is the thing that they see. So, offer them what they actually want to buy. And then in terms of us as tracking, we can track every single thing, and again, it's expensive, marketing is expensive. So you want to make sure it's working, and that if I'm out and I'm, doing social posts on Instagram or LinkedIn or wherever I'm advertising, that when those people come into the website, that they actually, first of all, book, and when they book, how long in advance are they booking, what room type are they booking, what package are they booking. So, and then using that experience to go back and relook at those personas and say, okay, now what do I need to do with those personas? And then the other side of it is the connected tech stack, which is huge, so it's making sure that we're taking as much manual process. I was saying to the guys when we were talking, when I'm talking to hotels now, I'm very rarely talking about my systems. I'm talking about how we connect with other systems. How do we deliver in bookings? How do we take manual processing away? How do we automate VCC charging? You've hotels spending like an hour or 2 hours every day, charging, virtual credit cards. Why? There's a system that can automate that, and why would you do that? So there's a lot in it.
Yeah, I remember having a conversation a few years back, I think 2021, with a hotel in the US, Best Turtle Bay Hotel. And he was talking about how he went to granular details of the data to identify his high-value guests, understand where they generally come from through the booking process, what channels they use, and he only markets and targets them only. And he's been able to significantly increase bookings, significantly increase revenue. And he doesn't do any of the mass media. He has a small social media following, but they're the high value social media followers. I mean, I guess all of this, is about trying to make things as efficient as possible, getting rid of the waste where you possibly can do, maximize that sort of opportunity of spend from each of the guests. What about the impact of that digital guest user experience, though? How are we thinking about that if we're, how do you get your head around what they're expecting, what they're needing?
Well, I asked at the table, had any of the guys actually booked their own hotel? Have any of you actually booked your own hotel? So actually, it's a really important thing to do. Go back and actually go through the booking process on your own property. But don't do it on desktop. Do it on mobile also. And actually, relive that. And see how easy it is. Like UX in the digital journey is huge, and we see, like, we have a conversion funnel in our back end data, so we can see exactly how many people start, exactly how many people finish the booking process, and you'd be surprised when people drop off. Now, and it depends on the area they drop off, but you've worked really hard to get them to your website, like really hard, So when you get them there, you really want them to book. So it is about looking at the data that's there in terms of, and often the time we take over a property, we might actually see a reduction in search because of exactly what you're saying. So we've looked at their personas, we've looked at their data, and then we'll say, actually, we need more of this audience. So we might actually have less people coming in, but more high value bookings, or more bookings, more conversion, because we've identified the correct audience, the audience that actually want to book, rather than, because there's no point in having people coming in there to search your property if they're never going to book you. Go after the people that will actually book and convert. The other things we look at, like origin, we look at, the origin of the business. So we say, where is it coming from? But also the lead time of that origin. So if and again, compare that against your OTAs. So if on your OTAs, or if you want to reduce OTA business, you look at, say, the lead time of your OTAs. You say, if it's 90 days, 100 days, whatever it is, from a certain region, say the States, we then can say, okay, our marketing activity to compete against that, we need to be at 120 days for the same audience. So we try and get ahead of it. And again, it's your own direct website is your least cost. From a cost perspective, it's always going to be the lowest cost, compared. And we need the other channels, and we'll never say you don't, but leverage your own site and leverage the data that's there to identify where you need to peg your own direct business. So it's, and again, it's all about looking at the data, but also working with, like, we're not just a tech provider, we're very much an agency. So we go the full journey with our clients. So it's literally from marketing to website to booking engine. So it literally is, and again, it's very much a partnership. We're saying, okay, this is where we want to spend the money, but we also need to show you where we're spending it. So we have live marketing reporting. Anybody in the hotel can go in and they can see how much we spent, what campaign has worked, but what it has generated in revenue. And that is the most important thing, because, and if it's not working, they don't spend it. There's no point. So it really is about that, giving that visibility. And then what we see is that people go, well, actually, this has really worked. Let's try more of that. Because we then see a higher conversion, higher booking values, higher upgrades, higher upsell. So it's because we're identifying the right audiences for them.
Excellent. Lovely. Sharon, thank you very much indeed. Okay, so now looking at tapping into closer guest relationships to tackle some of these commercial objectives and improve service. Prem and I had a conversation with the Queen of Chester. I think we're probably going to come out in and through our conversation here about really how they were able to tap into closer guest relationships. Prem, first, a quick thing about BiteLux.
Yes, so we are a guest experience agency, and we basically build high-end AI concierges for hotels. We operate a bit like an agency. So if you imagine your marketing team the same way they manage your paid advertising, we do a similar thing with your AI agent. So you just send us all across your menus, your events, your star training documents, and then we manage that AI for you. And the main reason hotels tend to use us is, number one, to increase guest satisfaction, ironically, to help staff spend more time with guests that are actually on the property, and then upsells.
So why do we need to rethink our approach to customer communications?
So hotel communications tend to be quite transactional during pre-arrival. So you book your room, you get a confirmation email, you book a table, confirmation email, and likewise a spa. And historically, the main piece of discovery that a hotel tends to do in the pre-arrival phase is that pre-arrival call, right? So you're calling the guests before they arrive, trying to find out what would make their stay more ideal. A downside to that is, number one, obviously the time constraints. You literally trying to call every single guest that's going to be staying at your hotel. Second of all, people are becoming less and less likely to pick up the phone to numbers that they just don't recognize, right? And then when you do have them on the phone, you've got this small window of opportunity for them to open up and tell you about what's going to make their stay more ideal. Cognitively speaking, there's easier channels to achieve the same thing, especially when it comes to instant messaging. So whether it's Facebook DM or an Instagram DM or WhatsApp, these are channels that guests are using on an everyday basis anyway to speak with their friends and family, right? It's short, it's a comfortable space, it's personal.
So WhatsApp more of a priority channel than SMS, Facebook, Booking.com Direct?
Yeah, I'd say so, just because WhatsApp tends to appeal to the widest range of audiences. So my mum's in her 70s, she uses WhatsApp. She definitely doesn't use Instagram DMs. And likewise with Booking.com, whilst a lot of hotels and guests do converse over Booking.com, they tend to find that the WhatsApp environment just tends to be more personal and they tend to open up more, probably because it's a more comfortable environment.
And why is it AI that's releasing opportunities here?
So having these WhatsApp conversations with each and every guest is obviously really time consuming, right? And we've spoken to hotels who'd previously assigned 2 full days a month just to WhatsApp conversations just because of the commercial benefits. But ironically, hotels weren't necessarily incentivized to spend too much time speaking with a guest over WhatsApp, just because not every single conversation you have with a guest on WhatsApp is going to lead to an upsell, right? And then conversational AI along this year took a real step up in capabilities. So we're now seeing AI that can literally speak to guests as well as your best members of staff. So case in point, one of our hotels was telling me recently about how a guest was talking about the needs of their autistic child. And that conversation was handled by the AI better than similar conversations that staff had been having with guests who've been working at the hotel for years. So we're now really at a stage where conversational AI understands nuance. It can speak on brand and it's totally suitable for the luxury segment. And fast forwarding a little bit, once hotels are getting this conversational AI live, a few thousand conversations later, they're going to see these patterns emerge. And case in point, at one of our hotels noticed that guests kept asking about early check-in and it wasn't a product at the time. So we helped them productize that. And that's been so successful that they've had to manage demand by adjusting pricing, which is obviously a great problem to have. And then further down the line yet again, once you've dealt with that, I'll call it low-hanging fruit. So you're productizing services where you don't have to fork out on capital expenditure or additional resources. Hotels are partnering with local suppliers like in-room spa treatments and local florists to converse with guests. And once that AI finds out contextually why a guest is staying, let's say for an anniversary, and they're offering them a bunch of flowers, the AI is then speaking with that supplier in the background, organizing for that bouquet of flowers to be delivered, and the guest is none the wiser. And that doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to use APIs. It can literally just be a case where once the AI has discovered that there's a demand for a product, it's just liaising with the supplier over email or WhatsApp and delivering that service. So we're at a stage now where if a hotel really wanted to, they could be offering bottles of Petrus to their guests without ever having to hold a bottle in sight. And the bottom line is AI is at a stage where it's allowing guests to spend an unlimited amount of time talking to guests, and that obviously brings lots and lots of opportunities.
We're going to go now into another breakout. So to start off with, Scott over here, what were some of the key points and discussions that you were having?
For an F&B guy, I'll try and break down this into a room. So if I'm not quite right, please step in and help. But I think everyone was talking about a reduced reliance on OTAs and really focusing in on regulars, which I think, speaking to a lot of hoteliers in the room, is something that happens in the New Forest particular quite a bit. So I think that was probably the main one. Some use it more than others, some don't. It sounds like a real minefield in terms of how that all works. From lead times, especially around in this area, people are talking about the weather having such an impact. So lead times are shortening. And I think that's actually something that was at Hospice that was talked about last week as well. But then the impact of the weather, good or bad, can either bring in a flood of last minute bookings or can keep things quiet, even rooms being sold on the day, that type of thing. I think everyone was talking about kind of 4 to 8 days on like half terms and holidays, but in general, it's kind of 4 weeks average. And then talking a lot about Limewood in particular having 100% or pretty much 100% direct bookings. And there was the same elsewhere in terms of how then there's the saving on the commission cost, but there's an element of where you have to invest that back in to really push that direct booking and get that channel coming through all the time. So it's not a pure profit of cutting them out and going direct, because you have to invest back in. So that's just something to think about. And then when we looked at Beyond the Room, we talked all about kind of diversification, having lots of experiences that people can pull up on. Depends on property. And I think the big thing that came back out of that is personalisation. So talking to the guest about what they would like as a greater success of getting that converted through to revenue than just flooding different opportunities around the result.
Wow, you guys were talking, weren't you? There was a lot in there. Thank you very much for that quick round guide. Alessandra, what was going on your table?
Well, very much the distribution over in the regions, and there was at the table a lot of direct bookings are being received and some partnership with smaller OTAs like Mr. and Mrs. Smith, which is coming from London for me Utopia, where we are fighting consistently against the likes of Booking.com and Expedia. So personalization, talking to the guest and having that availability, make sure that a lot of direct bookings still received over the phone down to at the table where I was sitting at, and some of the similar challenges that Scott just mentioned.
Excellent, wonderful, fantastic stuff. Thank you from our platinum sponsor there at Focus on Hospitality. Over to Prem, your table was a lot of waggy tails.
Yeah, there was a lot of talk about dogs. Somebody said that dogs don't cause as much misery as children. So no, there was a lot of focus on the pre-booking experience. I think somebody mentioned before about how hotels probably need to spend more time figuring out where guests are dropping off on their direct channels, and at the same time getting the mix right of when somebody's adding a booking to, we call it a basket on the website, figuring out the right balance of adding additional bits. So whether that's, a bouquet of flowers or chocolates or whatever, but making it streamlined enough that someone's not bouncing and then just going to an OTA and booking because it's so much easier, right? And then the pre-arrival experience that I mentioned before in my own talk, just how important that is for a lot of segments of hotels, especially if they're trying to discover what kind of experience that they want. Dogs is the big one, as I mentioned earlier on, because not all rooms are necessarily dog friendly. So there's a piece there to find out if the hotel is bringing their dog, and then if they are coming with their dog, what kind of experiences can you offer that dog to make their stay overall better? So I know somebody mentioned earlier on, I think it was this property mentioned that they've got afternoon teas for dogs. Some of the guys in our groups talking about how they've got dog beer and dog wine and a few other bits just to really cater for their audiences. So I think the bottom line is that pre-arrival piece is really important to at least prepare the stay so it's as enjoyable as possible for the guest, especially if they're coming with their dogs as well as their children.
Over to Sharon on your table.
Yeah, very similar. I think what came out of ours was more the lead time as well, that the lead time is definitely shortened, particularly in the last year, has been a real challenge, I suppose, operationally, to do that. And also the flexibility in dining around that, because actually there seems to be a big shift in people wanting to eat early and having all day dining as an option now, and that's beyond the room kind of thing. So actually maybe accommodating all of that. I think one thing that I thought was really interesting was, because we had a very varied chat, was about destination tourism, about actually making sure that if people are coming to destinations, so as hoteliers, you're investing in your hotel, but actually making sure that the parking is right in the area, the activities are right in the area, that there's something that actually that destination tourism is really important, that you're part of that whole thing, so that if you're attracting people, give them the resources that they need at the destination, not just your hotels. So I thought that was just an interesting piece that came out of the thing. But yeah, I mean, overall, I suppose lead is probably one of the biggest challenges operationally, because if they're only staying for one night, you're trying to obviously turn around, your costs are going up because your laundry is up, and so there's a lot of challenges around that. So trying to extend that lead that, I suppose, night stay is hard from a marketing perspective, but equally operationally challenging.
So in this, as I said, final section, we're going to be looking at experience and expansion. from everything that we have looked at, from costs, those revenue opportunities, but what is experience? Experience is beyond, I think, the industry focus on guest. It also really resides in us as leaders and how our experience is to be successful and lead a successful hotel business. But also, as we've discussed quite a bit across each of the sessions today, what does that mean for the staff? How do we create an industry experience that people want to be part of, to bring that new generation in to deliver those guest experiences that deliver that satisfaction or the reason we stay in hotels, particularly boutique independent properties like everyone's in this room. It's different if we're staying a quick night in a Premier Inn or a travel lodge. But if you're coming away into the countryside, there's a reason for that. There's a sense of expectation there. And we're going to look at also the area of expansion. As the business, our industry evolves, how do we expand? How do we adapt? How do we look at our business differently? And to start on that, I've got Paul from Studio Moren as we look at optimizing the physical asset to utilize space for experience, revenue, and operational efficiency. So Paul, just to start off with, tell us a bit about Studio Moren.
Yeah, so we're architecture and interior design practice. We've been going for about 35 years. We specialize in hospitality. We've worked on about 200 hotels in that period of time, substantial hotels, including the One Hotel in Berkeley Street in London. We just opened the Park Hyatt in Nine Elms. And we started working internationally. We've got projects in Saudi and in Eastern Europe and across Europe. But another part of our business is rural hotels. So we've been doing a number recently, looking at how we can reconfigure and develop properties to better drive revenue, drive guest experience, and I guess help you guys make money. That's really what it's about.
Luxury travel does continue to show resilience, certainly as part of the podcast I've done recently. But are you witnessing a shift in hotel design in particular? What are those aspirations and what you're looking at incorporating for like a higher level of design standards?
Yeah, so one thing that seems to be a consistent realization on is wellness and luxury are going hand in hand. They're doing extremely well. And then entry-level hotels are doing really well. So we're doing a lot of pod hotels and hostels at the moment. We're not doing much in the middle. And it feels that, therefore, we're focusing on how we can develop our luxury market. Lifestyle hotels are upping their game to compete in that sector. And a lot of that's to do with having operational ground floor spaces. So we don't just have a reception area and a restaurant. You have a co-working space, you have meeting spaces. You develop out how people would stay and use your building all day, really. And I think that through design, obviously, good design and good quality materials and nice environments are given with interior design. But from an architectural point of view, operations and that personalisation, I think there's been a lot of talk about personal and experiential travel today. We're seeing that come through everything we do as well, and trying to develop spaces that people feel are not a home from home. I like what you said earlier. It's not a home from home. It's come into our home and look after it and behave well. And I think that's what we do as designers. We're trying to design somewhere there's spaces that people want to dwell and enjoy being in and are destinations in their own right.
There's so many purposes, particularly, say, for corporate travel. And one of the areas now that a lot of tech companies in particular abandon their offices, remote work. They do need to bring their teams together, which they do. They do it on a regular basis. They will get them all together in a hotel and they'll spend a couple of days working. You've mentioned this whole idea of a co-working space. So there's different ways, I guess, you can structure the product that's going to cater to those different audiences. What other ways are you seeing hotels sort of improve that guest experience through space and generate revenue?
Yeah, so actually Scott and I are looking at some properties together at the minute. And one of the things we're trying to do is move away from that hard reception and have a much more welcoming environment. I think hotels have traditionally been slightly closed. People aren't sure whether they can come in and use them, particularly urban hotels. And actually, as a country hotel with a driveway, are people going to drive up it and have a cup of coffee, or do they feel they've got to be a guest? So actually that marketing element is important. But from a design point of view, creating spaces that people feel comfortable and welcome to come into and not having a hard reception, almost like a security point when you walk in, is incredibly important. And actually, I think you mentioned here you're doing 100 covers on Sunday lunch, they're not guests. They're people that are coming here. So you've obviously created a welcoming entry, a way to come in, and that's what we try to do. And we work with our interior designers to create those spaces, and with F&B consultants.
How are you seeing disruptors like Airbnb, apart hotels start to influence the direction of design in hotels?
I don't think Airbnb has been the disruptor we all thought it would be. I mean, in Edinburgh, they basically got rid of them, haven't they? They've just put legal positions in that you can't do it anymore. I think there's a place for everything in the market. And there's some people that will just choose to stay in an apartment because it's cheaper, or it's easier with a family, or it's a better location. There's other people that just want that sense of luxury. And I think serviced apartments, there are very good luxury apartments out there, don't get me wrong. But actually that sense of service is better achieved through a hotel, where you have that one-to-one ability to phone somebody and have somebody come and look after you in a way that maybe serviced apartments don't offer. I think there's space for everybody in the market, and I don't think it's been the disruptor that we all feared it would be 5 years ago or 10 years ago.
Because it is interesting what is influencing hotel design, because if you look at this room, Byron and I had a lovely conversation about the new Park Manor, which there is a separate interview podcast on that. But we talked about the interiors in particular and the upholstery and how it's decorated. You've really got to think about what that's communicating, I guess, and how that plays into people's mentality of modern design and lifestyle and choice.
Yeah, so I think there's two types of traveller. There's a traditional traveller that wants a country house to feel like it did 50 years ago, and you have a silver service tea and all the rest of it. But there's the newer traveller, the younger traveller probably, that's more likely to want a contemporary escape. And actually, this is what this hotel's doing. It's a contemporary design. There's touches of the traditional and the heritage of the building with fireplaces and chandeliers, but then equally there's modern art on the walls, and there's contemporary furniture. And actually, as designers, we understand longevity of product as well. So actually, we know how to specify for a hotel so that you get that wear and tear and it doesn't look used within a short period of time. We see a lot of products come forward where they've been designed by excellent interior designers, but perhaps with more of a focus on residential work, and it doesn't compete over to a hotel. You can't do the same designs at all. But I think you've got to understand who your clientele and who your market is. So there's certain hotels that will always benefit from being more traditional in style because that's where their market is. And there's certain hotels that will benefit from a more contemporary approach because they're going for a slightly different clientele.
Excellent. Lovely. Thank you very much indeed, Paul. So we've got a couple of quick fire interviews now, just to give you something else to think about. The first one is get Scott from Auden Hospitality back, as we just have a little bit of a rethink around this whole idea of expansion and experience. And particularly perhaps around the idea of how you are framing the delivery of some of your product. What we can learn really, and this is an interesting article that you had published about quick service restaurants, because it's not necessarily, you've got to rethink about what you're actually providing, right? It's about consistency of experience. Tell me a bit more about how quick service restaurants seem to have cracked the conundrum of experience versus cost.
Yeah, so we have a podcast on this as well, that my ops director has QSR background, and he explains it much better than me, but I'll give you an insight. So I worked in hotels for 15 years. I went to go work in full-service restaurants. We opened restaurants with Alain Ducasse, Frederic Vardon, China Grill Management. I ended up working for a Saudi investment business, and their model was they were buying young brands, growing them and scaling them. And a lot of those were in quick service restaurants because of the ease to be able to grow and scale. So I'd come from operating Alain Ducasse on the Palm in Dubai. I walked into a quick service restaurant, which was Dominic Ansel Bakery in London, and the whole world of quick service restaurants was completely alien to me. I could not fathom how these guys were doing what they were doing. Now, one of the first things, they don't have exec chefs, they don't have head chefs, they have kitchen managers. First of all, those guys are there not to be creative, they're there process driven to turn the food as quickly as possible in the quickest amount of time. And then we had minimum wage people who all had to do exactly the same thing. We had a vegan fast food restaurant called By Chloe, and it was turning over 40,000 a week, of which most of those sales came between 12 and 2 o'clock. And we were watching minimum wage people in the middle of Covent Garden turning out this food at such a speed with such a consistency that me coming from hotels where we have big teams of production chefs and we have exec chefs and we have creative people and we have banqueting and things like this, it was just so alien. And what we kind of learned from that process is that consistency is the number one. Quality is there, that's delivered from the R&D guys, and then it's brought into it. One of the things that we then looked at, obviously, is all the kitchens were set up the same way. The R&D guys produced the food to work the kitchen, not the other way around. They just didn't come up with an idea and go, this is a brilliant idea, now ops guys make it work. If it didn't cook in the right oven, if it didn't cook at the right temperature, if it couldn't be delivered quickly enough, it just didn't make the grade. So it was very strict in terms of how we designed kitchens, how we designed the workflow, and how we then developed the food. Then as we go in further granular, because we didn't have trained chefs, nothing could come in made in-house. Everything came in produced. It was bought in like that. Everyone would think that buying in ready-made items, washed salads, chopped tomatoes, things like that was more expensive. If you do the maths now in your operations, we're certainly seeing it in the operations we run, we're finding sometimes it's cheaper to buy in than it is to have a prep chef there making it. But what that gives you every time is prep and speed. Consistency and speed, sorry. I'll just be very quick. And then the way we set the recipes up wasn't in measurements, it was in scoops and it was in colours. So when we built it, every dish had this little colour chart and it was 2 red, 3 green, 2 blue, and it was running scoops and measured bottles, and everything was so quick in terms of building it. Now, it doesn't work for everything, but when we took this process and we built it into hotel operations, certainly in some environments, we're building it in a QSR format because the consistency is the right way every single time. And when you get that attrition of people, you're still maintaining the quality, you're still maintaining the consistency. It sets the whole thing up for success. So it was really interesting. And on the podcast, a quick plug, my ops director, Bally's background was McDonald's. He talks you through how McDonald's build a meal deal. And honestly, it's 10 minutes of just phenomenon. Even now, after being working in that environment, listening to the way he articulates building that meal process, I think there's something to take for every F&B leader that might sit in hotels to be able to adopt it back into their operation.
And how do we listen to this podcast?
It's called Hospitality Huddles. So you can listen to it. There's YouTube is the best way to do it. We've got video on there. Or Spotify, Apple, you can find it through the website, audenhospitality.com. But yeah, it's a really good episode.
Excellent. Lovely. Thank you very much indeed, Scott. Right now, over to Alessandra, our platinum sponsor, focused on hospitality, addressing this staff experience, particularly in relation to tech implementation using AI. It's the big buzzword at the moment. It's coming in everywhere. Perhaps one of the interesting points is, why are we asking hoteliers how to use AI rather than demonstrating the ways in which AI is solving problems for hotels? What is it when it comes to AI? What is next? How are you looking at sort of making that a success story for hoteliers?
Well, AI is here, is staying. It's got future. One thing that I've been talking to hotels a lot is what is their AI strategy? I was in a luxury hotel collection a couple of weeks ago, and the CTO tells me, no, we have an embargo around AI, and anything that we'll do is by committee. We meet once a month, we decide, we talk about it, and every committee meeting is a no. I'm like, how are you preventing your director of finance to put a P&L through ChatGPT to run a report because he's so busy and overwhelmed? And he looked at me. He was like, have you blocked ChatGPT? I was like, well, no, we haven't. So you are using AI. You just don't have a strategy for it. So AI should empower teams to do their jobs better, to turn into these superhumans with all these tools that are enterprise-grade tool without the large cost that we used to have to overcome a couple of years back. So have those conversations, decide what you want to achieve, look at the cost and your journey through AI, because your teams are using it in writing an email. Everybody knows the long dash, and there are some identifiers into the ChatGPT emails. So it's a free tool, it's available, people are using it. So decide as a brand what you want to do and empower your teams with those tools that you choose. At Focus, for example, we use a platform, we have access to it, it is control, and it has governance into the amount of data that how we ingest it and how we secure it. So have that strategy and look at the cost forward so you can make a plan for it.
I mean, a lot of systems are wanting to get ahead of the race in the AI game. And I certainly know that revenue management systems have been using AI for quite some time. CRMs are integrating AI. Anybody that uses PMax, Google PMax, performance max for travel goals, I think it is for advertising, that's all AI based. And PMSs are also looking at ways in which they can utilize AI to surface information. So in some respects, it's about, I guess, having a conversation with the technology provider, the system provider, and understanding where is AI within the system and how is it being used. That, I guess, ticks a box because then you don't have to worry about asking about how to implement it. But I guess there's other ways as well that AI, you can actually specifically go out there and say, right, AI is able to help me and my team do a better job. I know at Focus, you are particularly working on something particular there.
Yes, we are about to launch our Focus CX product that use conversational intelligence to automate part of the guest journey as well as the team journey. So without saying too much, but it really accelerates the conversion to revenue and upsells, allows the team to be supporting those pinch points when you have the influx of calls coming in and the influx of interaction, or your simple, what time can I check in? Can I bring my dog? Can I bring my children? Do you have a spa kind of questions that are all time consuming? And we were talking earlier about guest expectation. They want a lot more. They want it now. They don't have time to receive a call back because by the time you call them back, they've moved on to the next opportunity or the next options that they have. And like she was saying earlier about keeping your team engaged and keeping your team happy, they are no longer willing to do certain manual tasks that 30 years ago I used to do, and the virtual credit card charging, and you're calling up every guest to make sure, are you still arriving tomorrow, which is very relevant if you're running both a small hotel with a very low room stock and you are 100% occupied. You want to make sure all those guests will be turning up as due, and sometimes we're in a restaurant and it's like, oh, I forgot to cancel my reservation. So how are you optimizing and speeding up all those manual tasks? Now technology supports you to do that. We used to send manual pre-arrival, and then CRMs came, and all those processes were automated. Revenue management system. As a revenue manager, I was like, Ranimas is going to take away my job. But no, it allowed me to achieve so much more. So what we have coming is a solution that has a lot of success already across other sectors. And now I am working with the dev team to structure in a way that adapts to the hospitality processes.
So we've got about 20 or 25 minutes where we can break out again to have a few more of these conversations. It's lovely to see such good conversation still in the third session. So I'm going to have a quick review of some of those conversations. We'll keep it very short.
Well, definitely a lot of buying from AI from my group, a lot of interest in how it can help them mitigate some of the challenges that we have around increased revenue generation, make sure that no opportunities are left on the table.
Excellent, wonderful. That was certainly a topic around AI, wasn't it, Scott, on your table? What did we come out of there?
Yeah, we had quite a lot, didn't we? But I guess the main one was how we can automate kind of simple FAQs and take away some of that kind of mundane work, very similar to what you were talking about, and get people back in front of guests. So I don't know if anyone had the right solution yet, but it's definitely going over in people's minds of how we can be more efficient.
Prem.
Yeah, so we started off with some concerns of AI. I think that one of the big ones is guest data and sharing it right. You don't necessarily want to be collecting a bunch of guest data and then exporting it to ChatGPT somewhere in the US. Another concern was over-reliance on AI, at least public AI. One of the people in that group mentioned that they asked ChatGPT for the price of an annual rail card, and it was £13, which is obviously a great bargain, but unfortunately incorrect. At the same time, though, AI is obviously time-saving. Sometimes it happens to be the most intelligent thing in the room, as one person quoted. The low-hanging fruit is a lot of the analysis. So one good example somebody used was the mystery guest reports. Rather than reading through a whole bunch of stuff, uploading it to an AI, getting a summary. It sounds like AI policy, AI strategy is inevitable, and it's likely going to be cost-led. Someone in finance is going to come along and say, hey, look, we can cut this, that, and the other. But at the same time, there needs to be pushback just to ensure that you're maintaining that guest experience, and it's not all about cost-cutting in the short term.
Sharon, what was on your table?
Very similar. I think one of the things that did come out was that sometimes AI can actually make some work for you if the system is not working properly in terms of, say, labor management, and also that AI won't know if you're trying to do a rota that the skill set of this person versus another person, it just won't ever know that. So there's always going to be a piece that can never be AI'd, but it is about looking at those manual processes and saying how much of it can be automated, but making sure that the dots are connected as well. So very much around that. And one thing that did come out, I think, was using the systems then to give flexibility within your teams. So actually, generating ideas around that, in terms of, say, 3.5-day working weeks, or so making sure that actually the AI is showing you how you can be more efficient in your staff rotating. So we looked at it from the internal perspective.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Paul, was that all covered?
At its heart, we're a people business, not an AI business. And that's what it comes down to.
Thank you ever so much for joining us here as part of Hospitality Discussions. That's been us covering areas of cost, revenue and experience. Join us more on the road as part of the UK Roundtable Roadshow in Cornwall and Whittlebury.